Hi there, dear friends. Welcome back to Serene Mind Stories, where the day gently fades away and the world of old folk tales begins to glow. Tonight, we're stepping into a realm shaped by the brothers Grimm, a place where forests whisper, magic stirs quietly in the shadows, and every story carries a little spark of wonder. Before we begin, go ahead and settle into a cozy spot. Let your shoulders soften, let your breath slow, and allow your mind to drift, lightly, effortlessly, into that peaceful space between waking and dreaming. This is your moment to unwind, to release the weight of the day, and to travel with me into the ancient stories that once warmed countless hearths across Europe. If you enjoy these calming nighttime journeys, feel free to subscribe and tap the little bell so you can join us again whenever you need a gentle escape. Now, take one more slow breath and let's step together into the timeless magic of Grimm's fairy tales. 1. The Frog King or Iron Heinrich. In olden times, when wishing still did some good, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful. But the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself, who indeed has seen so much, marveled every time it shone upon her face. In the vicinity of the king's castle, there was a large, dark forest. And in this forest, beneath an old linden tree, there was a well. In the heat of the day, the princess would go out into the forest and sit on the edge of the cool well. To pass the time, she would take a golden ball, throw it into the air, and then catch it. It was her favorite plaything. Now one day, it happened that the princess's golden ball did not fall into her hands, that she held up high, but instead it fell to the ground and rolled right into the water. The princess followed it with her eyes, but the ball disappeared, and the well was so deep that she could not see its bottom. Then she began to cry. She cried louder and louder, and she could not console herself. As she was thus lamenting, someone called out to her, "What is the matter with you, princess? Your crying would turn a stone to pity." She looked around to see where the voice was coming from and saw a frog who had stuck his thick, ugly head out of the water. "Oh, it's you, old water splasher," she said. "I am crying because my golden ball has fallen into the well." "Be still and stop crying," answered the frog. "I can help you, but what will you give me if I bring back your plaything?" "Whatever you want, dear frog," she said. "My clothes, my pearls and precious stones, and even the golden crown that I am wearing." The frog answered, "I do not want your clothes, your pearls and precious stones, nor your golden crown, but if you will love me and accept me as a companion and playmate, and let me sit next to you at your table and eat from your golden plate, and drink from your cup and sleep in your bed, if you will promise this to me, then I'll dive down and bring your golden ball back to you." "Oh yes," she said. "I promise all of that to you if you will just bring the ball back to me." But she thought, what is this stupid frog trying to say? He just sits here in the water with his own kind and croaks. He cannot be a companion to a human. As soon as the frog heard her say yes, he stuck his head under and dove to the bottom. He paddled back up a short time later with the golden ball in his mouth and threw it onto the grass. The princess was filled with joy when she saw her beautiful plaything once again, picked it up and ran off. "Wait, wait," called the frog. "Take me along. I cannot run as fast as you." But what did it help him that he croaked out after her as loudly as he could? She paid no attention to him but instead hurried home and soon forgot the poor frog, who had to return again to his well. The next day, the princess was sitting at the table with the king and all the people of the court, and was eating from her golden plate when something came creeping up the marble steps. Plip, plop, plip, plop. As soon as it reached the top, there came a knock at the door, and a voice called out, "Princess, youngest, open the door for me." She ran to see who was outside. She opened the door, and the frog was sitting there. Frightened, she slammed the door shut and returned to the table. The king saw that her heart was pounding and asked, "My child, why are you afraid? Is there a giant outside the door who wants to get you?" "Oh no," she answered. "It is a disgusting frog." "What does the frog want from you?" "Oh, father dear, yesterday when I was sitting near the well in the forest and playing, my golden ball fell into the water, and because I was crying so much, the frog brought it back, and because he insisted, I promised him that he could be my companion, but I didn't think that he could leave his water. But now he is just outside the door and wants to come in." Just then, there came a second knock at the door, and a voice called out, "Youngest daughter of the king, open up the door for me. Don't you know what yesterday you said to me down by the well? Youngest daughter of the king, open up the door for me." The king said, "What you have promised you must keep. Go and let the frog in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in, then followed her up to her chair. He sat there and called out, "Lift me up next to you." She hesitated, until finally the king commanded her to do it. When the frog was seated next to her, he said, "Now push your golden plate closer so we can eat together." She did it, but one could see that she did not want to. The frog enjoyed his meal, but for her every bite stuck in her throat. Finally he said, "I have eaten all I want and am tired. Now carry me to your room and make your bed so that we can go to sleep." The princess began to cry and was afraid of the cold frog and did not dare to even touch him, and yet was supposed to sleep in her beautiful, clean bed. The king became angry and said, "You should not despise someone who has helped you in time of need." She picked him up with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and set him in a corner. As she was lying in bed, he came creeping up to her and said, "I am tired, and I want to sleep as well as you do. Pick me up, or I'll tell your father." With that she became bitterly angry and threw him against the wall with all her might. "Now you will have your peace, you disgusting frog." But when he fell down, he was not a frog, but a prince with beautiful, friendly eyes. And he was now, according to her father's will, her dear companion and husband. He told her how he had been enchanted by a wicked witch, and that she alone could have rescued him from the well, and that tomorrow they would go together to his kingdom. Then they fell asleep. The next morning, just as the sun was waking them, a carriage pulled up, drawn by 8 horses. They had white ostrich feathers on their heads and were outfitted with chains of gold. At the rear stood the young king's servant, faithful Heinrich. Faithful Heinrich had been so saddened by his master's transformation into a frog that he had had to place 3 iron bands around his heart to keep it from bursting in grief and sorrow. The carriage was to take the king back to his kingdom. Faithful Heinrich lifted them both inside and took his place at the rear. He was filled with joy over the redemption. After they had gone a short distance, The prince heard a crack from behind, as though something had broken. He turned around and said, "Heinrich, the carriage is breaking apart." "No, my lord, the carriage it's not, but one of the bands surrounding my heart that suffered such great pain when you were sitting in the well, when you were a frog." Once again, and then once again, the prince heard a cracking sound and thought that the carriage was breaking apart, but it was the band springing from faithful Heinrich's heart, because his master was now redeemed and happy. 2. Cat and mouse in partnership. A cat had made the acquaintance of a mouse and had said so much to her about the great love and friendship that he felt for her, that at last the mouse agreed that they should live and keep house together. "But we must make preparations for winter, or else we shall suffer from hunger," said the cat. "And you, little mouse, cannot venture out everywhere, or in the end you will be caught in a trap." This good advice was followed, and they bought a pot of fat, but they did not know where to store it. Finally, after much consideration, the cat said, "I know of no place where it will be better stored up than in the church. No one dares take anything away from there. We will put it beneath the altar and not touch it until we are needed." So the pot was stored safely away, but it was not long before the cat took a great longing for it and said to the mouse, "I wanted to tell you, little mouse, that my cousin has brought a little son into the world, and she has asked me to be his godfather. He is white with brown spots, and I am to hold him over the baptismal font. Let me go out today, and you look after the house by yourself." "Yes, yes," answered the mouse. "By all means go, and if you get anything good to eat, think of me. I would like to drink a drop of sweet red christening wine myself." All this, however, was untrue. The cat had no cousin, and had not been asked to be godfather. He went straight to the church, crept up to the pot of fat, began to lick at it, and licked off the top of the fat. Then he went for a stroll on the roofs of the town, looked out for opportunities, and then stretched out in the sun, licking his whiskers whenever he thought of the pot of fat. He did not return home until it was evening. "Well, here you are again," said the mouse. "You must have had a happy day." "Everything went well," answered the cat. "What name did they give the child?" asked the mouse. "Top Off," said the cat quite coolly. "Top Off," cried the mouse. "That is a very odd and uncommon name. Is it a usual one in your family?" "What does that matter?" said the cat. "It is no worse than Crumb Thief, as your godchildren are called." Before long the cat was seized by another fit of longing. He said to the mouse, "You must do me a favour and once more manage the house alone for a day. I have been asked again to be godfather, and since the child has a white ring around its neck, I cannot refuse." The good mouse consented. However, the cat crept behind the town wall to the church and devoured half the pot of fat. "Nothing tastes as good as that which one eats by oneself," he said, and was quite satisfied with his day's work. When he arrived home, the mouse asked, "What name was this child christened with?" "Half Gone," answered the cat. "Half Gone? What are you saying? I have never heard that name in all my life. I'll wager it is not in the almanac." The cat's mouth soon again began to water for the delicious goods. "All good things come in threes," he said to the mouse. "I have been asked to be godfather again. The child is totally black, only it has white paws. Otherwise, it has not a single white hair on its whole body. This only happens once every few years. You will let me go, won't you?" "Top off. Half gone," answered the mouse. "They are such odd names that they make me stop and think." "Here you sit at home," said the cat, "with your dark grey fur coat and long braid of hair capturing fantasies. That is because you do not go out in the daytime." During the cat's absence, the mouse cleaned the house and put it in order, but the greedy cat devoured all the rest of the fat. "One has peace only after everything is eaten up," he said to himself. Well filled and fat, he did not return home until night time. The mouse immediately asked what name had been given to the third child. "You will not like it either," said the cat. "His name is All Gone." "All Gone," cried the mouse. "That is the most worrisome name of all. I have never seen it in print. All Gone. What can that mean?" Then she shook her head, curled herself up, and lay down to sleep. From this time forth, no one invited the cat to be godfather. But when winter had come, and there was no longer anything to be found outside, the mouse thought of their stored food and said, "Come, cat, we will go to our pot of fat which we have stored up for ourselves. It will taste good now." "Yes," answered the cat. "You will enjoy it as much as you would enjoy sticking that dainty tongue of yours out of the window." They set out on their way, but when they arrived, the pot of fat, to be sure, was still in its place, but it was empty. "Alas," said the mouse, "now I see what has happened. Now it comes to light. You are a true friend. You ate everything when you were serving as a godfather. First top off, then half done. Then—" "Be quiet," cried the cat. "One more word, and I will eat you too." All Gone was already on the poor mouse's lips. She had scarcely spoken it before the cat sprang on her, seized her, and swallowed her down. You see, that is the way of the world. 3. Mary's Child. Near a great forest there lived a woodcutter with his wife. He had but one child, a 3-year-old girl. Now they were so poor that they no longer had their daily bread, and they did not know how they were to feed her. One morning the woodcutter, filled with sorrow, went out to his work in the woods. While he was chopping wood, suddenly there stood before him a beautiful tall woman with a crown of shining stars on her head. She said to him, "I am the Virgin Mary, mother of the baby Jesus. You are poor and needy. Bring your child to me. I will take her with me and be her mother and care for her." The woodcutter obeyed, fetched his child, and turned her over to the Virgin Mary, who took her up into heaven with her. There the child fared well. She ate sweetened bread and drank fresh milk. Her clothes were of gold, and the little angels played with her. When she was 14 years old, the Virgin Mary summoned her one day and said, "Dear child, I am about to make a long journey. Take care of these keys to the 13 doors of heaven. You may open 12 of these doors and behold the glorious things inside, but the 13th door, to which this little key belongs, is forbidden for you. Be careful not to open it, or you will be unhappy." The girl promised to be obedient, and when the Virgin Mary was gone, she began to examine the dwellings of the kingdom of heaven. Each day she opened one of them, until she had been to all 12. An apostle, surrounded by great brilliance, sat in each one. She rejoiced in the magnificence and splendor, and the little angels who always accompanied her rejoiced with her. Now only the forbidden door remained, and she felt a great desire to know what was hidden behind it. She said to the little angels, I will not open it all the way, nor will I go inside, but I will only unlock it so that we can see just a little through the crack." "Oh no," said the little angels. "That would be a sin. The Virgin Mary has forbidden it, and it might easily lead to unhappiness for you." To that she said nothing, but the desire in her heart was not stilled. To the contrary, it gnawed away, tormenting her, and would give her no rest. Then one day, when the angels had all gone out, she thought, "I am entirely alone now, and I could peek in. If I do so, no one will ever know." She sought out the key, and as soon as she had it in her hand, she put it into the lock as well. And as soon as it was in the lock, she turned it around as well. The door sprang open, and there she saw the Trinity sitting in fire and brilliance. She stayed there a little while, looking at everything in amazement. Then she put her finger a little way into the brilliance, and her finger turned entirely golden. Immediately, a great fear fell upon her. She slammed the door shut and ran away. The fear did not go away, do what she may. Her heart pounded furiously forth and would not become still, and the gold remained on her finger as well. It would not come off, no matter how much she washed and rubbed. Not long afterward, the Virgin Mary returned from her journey. She summoned the girl and asked her to return the keys of heaven. When the girl gave the ring of keys to her, the Virgin looked into her eyes and said, "Have you not opened the 13th door as well?" "No," she replied. Then the Virgin Mary laid her hand on the girl's heart and felt how it pounded and pounded, and saw well that she had disobeyed her order and had opened the door. Then she said further, "You did not do it for sure?" "No," said the girl a second time. Then the Virgin noticed the finger that had turned golden from having touched the heavenly fire, and knew well that the girl had sinned, and she said a third time, "Have you not done it?" "No," said the girl a third time. Then the Virgin Mary said, "You have not obeyed me, and you have lied as well. You are no longer worthy to be in heaven." Then the girl sank into a deep sleep, and when she awoke she lay below on earth, in the middle of a wilderness. She wanted to cry out, but she could not bring forth a sound. She jumped up and wanted to run away, but in wherever she turned, she was held back by thick thorn hedges, which she could not break through. In the wilderness where she was imprisoned, there stood an old hollow tree. It would have to serve as her home. She crept inside it when night came, and slept there. And when it stormed and rained, she found shelter inside it. But it was a miserable life, and she cried bitterly when she thought about how beautiful it had been in heaven, and how the angels had played with her. Roots and wild berries were her only food, which she looked for as far as she could go. In the fall, she gathered the fallen nuts and leaves and carried them into the opening in the tree. The nuts were her food during the winter, and when snow and ice came, she crept under the leaves like a poor little animal so that she would not freeze. Before long, her clothes were ripped to shreds, and one piece of them after another fell off her. When the sun shone warmly again, she went outside and sat in front of the tree. Her long hair covered her on all sides like a cloak. Thus she sat year after year, feeling the world's misery and pain. One day, when the trees were once again a fresh green, the king of the country was hunting in the woods. He followed a deer that had fled into the thicket that surrounded this part of the woods. Getting off his horse, he tore the brush aside and cut himself a path with his sword. When he had at last forced his way through, he saw a wonderfully beautiful girl sitting under the tree, covered entirely with her golden hair down to her toes. Filled with amazement, he stood still and looked at her. Then he spoke to her, saying, "Who are you? Why are you sitting here in this wilderness?" But she gave no answer, for she could not open her mouth. The king continued, "Will you go with me to my castle?" To this, she just nodded her head a little. The king took her into his arms, lifted her onto his horse, and rode home with her. Arriving at the royal castle, he had her dressed in beautiful clothing and gave her an abundance of everything. Although she could not speak, she was still so beautiful and charming that he fell in love with her with all his heart, and it was not long before he married her. About a year later, the new queen brought a son into the world. Afterward, the Virgin Mary appeared to her in the night when she was lying alone in her bed and said, "If you will tell the truth and confess that you unlocked the forbidden door, I will open your mouth and give you back your speech. But if you persevere in sin and stubbornly deny it, I will take your newborn child away with me." The queen was allowed to answer, but she remained obstinate and said, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." And the Virgin Mary took the newborn child out of her arms and disappeared with it. The next morning, when the child was not to be found, it was rumored among the people that the queen was a cannibal and had killed her own child. She heard all this and could say nothing to the contrary, but the king did not want to believe it because he loved her so much. 1 year later, the queen again bore a son. In the night, the Virgin Mary again came to her and said, "If you will confess that you opened the forbidden door, I will give you your child back and release your tongue. But if you continue in sin and deny it, then I will take this newborn child with me as well." Then the queen said again, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." And the Virgin took the child out of her arms and took it away with her to heaven. The next morning, when this child had disappeared as well, the people loudly said that the queen had eaten it, and the king's counselors demanded that she should be brought to justice. The king, however, loved her so dearly that he would not believe it, and ordered the counselors, under threat of death, to say nothing more about it. The following year, the queen gave birth to a beautiful little daughter, and for a third time the Virgin Mary appeared to her in the night. She said, "Follow me." Taking the queen by the hand, she led her to heaven and showed her there her 2 oldest children, who were laughing and playing with the ball of the world. When the queen rejoiced at seeing this, the Virgin Mary said, "Has your heart not yet softened? If you will confess that you opened the forbidden door, I will give you back your 2 little sons." But for a third time the queen answered, "No, I did not open the forbidden door." Then the Virgin let her sink down to earth again and took away her 3rd child as well. The next morning, when it became known, all the people shouted loudly, "The queen is a cannibal. She must be condemned." And the king was no longer able to hold back his counselors. A trial was held, and as she wasn't able to respond and defend herself, she was condemned to be burned at the stake. Wood was piled together. After she had been bound tightly to a stake, and the fire was beginning to burn around her, the hard ice of pride melted. Her heart was moved by regret, and she thought, "If only I could confess before my death that I opened the door." Then her voice came back to her, and she cried out loudly, "Yes, Mary, I did it." Immediately rain began to fall from heaven, and it put out the fiery flames. A light broke forth above her, and the Virgin Mary descended. She had the 2 little sons by her side, and the newborn daughter on her arm. Speaking kindly to her, she said, "Whoever repents a sin and confesses it will be forgiven." Then she gave her the 3 children, released her tongue, and gave her happiness for her entire life. 4. The story of a boy who went forth to learn fear. A father had 2 sons. The oldest one was clever and intelligent, and knew how to manage everything. But the youngest one was stupid and could neither understand nor learn anything. When people saw him, they said, "He will be a burden on his father." Now, when something had to be done, it was always the oldest son who had to do it. However, if the father asked him fetch anything when it was late, or even worse, at night, and if the way led through the churchyard or some other spooky place, he would always answer, "Oh no, father, I won't go there. It makes me shudder." For he was afraid. In the evening by the fire, when stories were told that made one's flesh creep, the listeners sometimes said, "Oh, that makes me shudder." The youngest son would sit in a corner and listen with the others, but he could not imagine what they meant. They are always saying, "It makes me shudder. It makes me shudder." It does not make me shudder. That too must be a skill that I do not understand. Now it happened that one day his father said to him, "Listen, you there in the corner. You are getting big and strong. You too will have to learn something by which you can earn your bread. See how your brother puts himself out, but there seems to be no hope for you." "Well, father," he answered, "I do want to learn something. Indeed, if possible, I would like to learn how to shudder. I don't understand that at all yet." The oldest son laughed when he heard that, and thought to himself, "Dear God, what a dimwit that brother of mine is. Nothing will come of him as long as he lives. As the twig is bent, so grows the tree." The father sighed and answered him, "You may well learn to shudder, but you will not earn your bread by shuddering." Soon afterward, the sexton came to the house on a visit, and the father complained to him about his troubles, telling him how his younger son was so stupid in everything that he knew nothing and was learning nothing. "Just think," he said, "when I asked him how he was going to earn his bread, he actually asked to learn to shudder." "If there is nothing more than that," replied the sexton, "he can learn that with me. Just send him to me. I will plane off his rough edges." The father agreed to do this, for he thought, "It will do the boy well." So the sexton took him home with him, and he was to ring the church bell. A few days later, the sexton awoke him at midnight and told him to get up, climb the church tower, and ring the bell. "You will soon learn what it is to shudder," he thought. He secretly went there ahead of him. After the boy had reached the top of the tower, had turned around, and was about to take hold of the bell rope, he saw a white figure standing on the steps opposite the sound hole. "Who is there?" he shouted, but the figure gave no answer, neither moving nor stirring. "Answer me," shouted the boy, "or get out of here. You have no business here at night." The sexton, however, remained standing there motionless, so that the boy would think he was a ghost. The boy shouted a second time, "What do you want here? Speak if you are an honest fellow, or I will throw you down the stairs." The sexton thought, "He can't seriously mean that." He made not a sound and stood as if he were made of stone. Then the boy shouted to him for the third time, and as that also was to no avail, he ran toward him and pushed the ghost down the stairs. It fell down 10 steps and remained lying there in a corner. Then the boy rang the bell, went home, and without saying a word, went to bed and fell asleep. The sexton's wife waited a long time for her husband, but he did not come back. Finally, she became frightened and woke up the boy asking, "Don't you know where my husband is? He climbed up the tower before you did." "No," replied the boy, "but someone was standing by the sound hole on the other side of the steps, and because he would neither give an answer nor go away, I took him for a thief and threw him down the steps. Go there and you will see if he was the one. I am sorry if he was." The woman ran out and found her husband, who was lying in the corner moaning. He had broken his leg. She carried him down, and then crying loudly, she hurried to the boy's father. "Your boy," she shouted, "has caused a great misfortune. He threw my husband down the steps, causing him to break his leg. Take the good-for-nothing out of our house." The father was alarmed and ran to the sexton's house and scolded the boy. "What evil tricks are these? The devil must have prompted you to do them." "Father," he replied, "do listen to me. I am completely innocent. He was standing there in the night like someone with evil intentions. I did not know who it was, and I warned him 3 times to speak or to go away." "Oh," said the father, "I have experienced nothing but unhappiness with you. Get out of my sight. I do not want to look at you anymore." "Yes, father, and gladly. Just wait until daylight, and I will go forth and learn how to shudder. Then I shall have a skill that will support me." "Learn what you will," said the father. "It is all the same to me. Here are 50 tailors for you. Take them and go into the wide world, but tell no one where you come from or who your father is, because I am ashamed of you." "Yes, father, I will do just as you wish. If that is all you want from me, I can easily remember it." So at daybreak, the boy put his 50 tailors into his pocket and went forth on the main road, continually saying to himself, "If only I could shudder, if only I could shudder." A man came up to him and heard this conversation that the boy was holding with himself. And when they had walked a little farther to where they could see the gallows, the man said to him, "Look, there is the tree where 7 men got married to the rope maker's daughter and are now learning how to fly. Sit down beneath it and wait until night comes, and then you will learn how to shudder." "If there is nothing more than that," answered the boy, "I can do it easily. But if I learn how to shudder that quickly, you shall have my 50 tailors. Just come back to me tomorrow morning." Then the boy went to the gallows, sat down beneath them, and waited until evening. Because he was cold, he made himself a fire. However, at midnight, there came up such a cold wind that in spite of his fire, he could not get warm. And as the wind pushed the hanged men against each other, causing them to move to and fro, he thought, "You are freezing down here next to the fire. Those guys up there must really be freezing and suffering." Feeling pity for them, he put up the ladder and climbed up, untied them, one after the other, and then brought down all 7. Then he stirred up the fire, blew into it, and set them all around it to warm themselves. But they just sat there without moving, and their clothes caught fire. So he said, "Be careful, or I will hang you up again." The dead men, however, heard nothing and said nothing, and they let their rags continue to burn. This made him angry, and he said, "If you won't be careful, I can't help you. I don't want to burn up with you." So he hung them up again all in a row. Then he sat down by his fire and fell asleep. The next morning, the man came to him and wanted to have the 50 thalers. He said, "Well, do you know how to shudder?" "No," he answered. "Where would I have learned it? Those fellows up there did not open their mouths. They were so stupid that they let the few old rags which they had on their bodies catch fire." Then the man saw that he would not be getting the 50 thalers that day. He went away saying, "Never before have I met such a fellow." The boy went on his way as well, and once more began muttering to himself, "Oh, if only I could shudder. Oh, if only I could shudder." A cart driver who was walking along behind him heard this and asked, "Who are you?" "I don't know," replied the boy. Then the cart driver asked, "Where do you come from?" "I don't know." "Who is your father?" "I am not permitted to say." "What are you always muttering to yourself?" "Oh," replied the boy, "I want to be able to shudder, but no one can teach me how." "Stop that foolish chatter," said the cart driver. "Come, walk along with me, and I will see that I get a place for you." The boy went with the cart driver, and that evening they came to an inn where they decided to spend the night. On entering the main room, the boy again said quite loudly, "If only I could shudder, if only I could shudder." Hearing this, the innkeeper laughed and said, "If that is your desire, there should be a good opportunity for you here." "Oh, be quiet," said the innkeeper's wife. "Too many meddlesome people have already lost their lives. It would be a pity and a shame if his beautiful eyes would never again see the light of day." But the boy said, "I want to learn to shudder, however difficult it may be. That is why I left home." He gave the innkeeper no rest until the latter told him that there was a haunted castle not far away where a person could very easily learn how to shudder if he would just keep watch there for 3 nights. The king had promised that whoever would dare to do this could have his daughter in marriage, and she was the most beautiful maiden under the sun. Further, in the castle there were great treasures guarded by evil spirits. These treasures would then be freed and would make a poor man rich enough. Many had entered the castle, but no one had come out again. The next morning, the boy went to the king and said, "If it be allowed, I will keep watch 3 nights in the haunted castle." The king looked at him, and because the boy pleased him, he said, "You may ask for 3 things to take into the castle with you, but they must be things that are not alive." To this the boy replied, "Then I ask for a fire, a lathe, and a woodcarver's bench with a knife." The king had all these things carried into the castle for him during the day. When night was approaching, the boy went inside and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms, placed the woodcarver's bench and knife beside it, and sat down at the lathe. "Oh, if only I could shudder," he said, "but I won't learn it here either." Towards midnight, he decided to stir up his fire. He was just blowing into it when a cry suddenly came from one of the corners. "Ow, meow, how cold we are." "You fools," he shouted, "what are you crying about? If you are cold, come and sit down by the fire and warm yourselves." When he had said that, 2 large black cats came with a powerful leap and sat down on either side of him, looking at him savagely with their fiery eyes. A little while later, after warming themselves, They said, "Comrade, shall we play a game of cards?" "Why not?" he replied, "but first show me your paws." So they stretched out their claws. "Oh," he said, "what long nails you have. Wait, first I will have to trim them for you." With that he seized them by their necks, put them on the woodcarver's bench, and tightened them into the vise by their feet. "I have been looking at your fingers," he said, "and my desire to play cards has disappeared." And he struck them dead and threw them out into the water. After he had put these two to rest, he was about to sit down again by his fire, when from every side and every corner there came black cats and black dogs on red-hot chains. More and more of them appeared until he could no longer move. They shouted horribly, then jumped into his fire and pulled it apart, trying to put it out. He quietly watched them for a little while, but finally it was too much for him, and he seized his carving knife and cried, "Away with you, you villains," and hacked away at them. Some of them ran away, the others he killed, and threw out into the pond. When he came back, he blew into the embers of his fire until they flamed up again and warmed himself. As he thus sat there, his eyes would no longer stay open, and he wanted to fall asleep. Looking around, he saw a large bed in the corner. "That is just what I wanted," he said, and lay down in it. However, as he was about to shut his eyes, the bed began to move by itself, going throughout the whole castle. "Good," he said, "but let's go faster." Then the bed rolled on as if 6 horses were harnessed to it, over thresholds and stairways, up and down. But then suddenly, hop, hop, it tipped upside down and lay on him like a mountain. But he threw the covers and pillows into the air, climbed out and said, "Now anyone who wants to may drive." Then he lay down by his fire and slept until it was day. In the morning the king came, and when he saw him lying there on the ground, he thought that the ghost had killed him and that he was dead. Then said he, "It is indeed a pity to lose such a handsome person." The boy heard this, got up and said, "It hasn't come to that yet." The king was astonished, but glad, and asked how he had fared. "Very well," he replied. "One night is past, the 2 others will pass as well." When he returned to the innkeeper, the latter looked astonished and said, "I did not think that I'd see you alive again. Did you learn how to shudder?" "No," he said, "it is all in vain. If someone could only tell me how." The second night, he again went up to the old castle, sat down by the fire, and began his old song once more, "If only I could shudder." As midnight was approaching, he heard a noise and commotion. At first it was soft, but then louder and louder. Then it was a little quiet, and finally, with a loud scream, half of a man came down the chimney and fell in front of him. "Hey," he shouted, "another half belongs here. This is too little." Then the noise began again. With roaring and howling, the other half fell down as well. "Wait," he said, "let me blow on the fire and make it burn a little warmer for you." When he had done that and looked around again, the 2 pieces had come together, and a hideous man was sitting in his place. "That wasn't part of the wager," said the boy. "That bench is mine." The man wanted to force him aside, but the boy would not let him, instead pushing him away with force, and then sitting down again in his own place. Then still more men fell down, one after the other. They brought 9 bones from dead men and 2 skulls, then set them up and bowled with them. The boy wanted to play too, and said, "Listen, can I bowl with you?" "Yes, if you have money." "Money enough, he answered, "but your bowling balls are not quite round." Then he took the skulls, put them in the lathe, and turned them round. "There, now they will roll better," he said. "Hey, this will be fun." He played with them and lost some of his money, but when the clock struck 12, everything disappeared before his eyes. He lay down and peacefully fell asleep. The next morning, the king came to learn what had happened. "How did you do this time?" he asked. "I went bowling," he answered, "and lost a few pennies." "Did you shudder?" "How?" he said. "I had great fun, but if I only knew how to shudder." On the third night, he sat down again on his bench and said quite sadly, "If only I could shudder." When it was late, 6 large men came in carrying a coffin. At this he said, "Aha, for certain that is my little cousin, who died a few days ago." Then he motioned with his finger and cried out, "Come, little cousin, come." They put the coffin on the ground. He went up to it and took the lid off. A dead man lay inside. He felt his face, and it was cold as ice. "Wait," he said, "I will warm you up a little." He went to the fire and warmed his own hand, then laid it on the dead man's face, but the dead man remained cold. Then he took him out, sat down by the fire, and laid him on his lap, rubbing the dead man's arms to get the blood circulating again. When that did not help either, he thought to himself, "When 2 people lie in bed together, they keep each other warm." So he carried the dead man to the bed, put him under the covers, and lay down next to him. A little while later, the dead man became warm too, and began to move. The boy said, "See, little cousin, I got you warm, didn't I?" But the dead man cried out, "I am going to strangle you." "What?" he said. "Is that my thanks? Get back into your coffin." Then he picked him up, threw him inside, and shut the lid. Then the 6 men came and carried him away again. "I cannot shudder," he said. "I won't learn it here as long as I live." Then a man came in. He was larger than all others and looked frightful, but he was old and had a long white beard. "You wretch," he shouted, "you shall soon learn what it is to shudder, for you are about to die." "Not so fast," answered the boy. "If I am to die, I will have to be there." "I've got you," said the monster. Now, don't boast. I am just as strong as you are, and probably even stronger." "We shall see," said the old man. "If you are stronger than I am, I shall let you go. Come, let's put it to the test." Then the old man led him through dark passageways to a blacksmith's forge, took an axe, and with one blow drove one of the anvils into the ground. "I can do better than that," said the boy, and went to the other anvil. The old man stood nearby, wanting to look on. His white beard hung down. The boy seized the axe and split the anvil with one blow, wedging the old man's beard in the crack. "Now I have you," said the boy. "Now it is your turn to die." Then he seized an iron bar and beat the old man until he moaned and begged him to stop, promising that he would give him great riches. The boy pulled out the axe and released him. The old man led him back into the castle and showed him 3 chests full of gold in a cellar. "Of these," he said, "one is for the poor, the second one is for the king, and the third one is yours." Meanwhile, it struck 12, and the spirit disappeared, leaving the boy standing in the dark. "I can find my own way out," he said. Feeling around, he found his way to the bedroom and fell asleep by his fire. The next morning, the king came and said, "By now you must have learned how to shudder." "No," he answered. "What is it?" "My dead cousin was here," and a bearded man came and showed me a large amount of money down below, but no one showed me how to shudder. Then the king said, "You have redeemed the castle, and shall marry my daughter." "That is all very well," said the boy, "but I still do not know how to shudder." Then the gold was brought up, and the wedding celebrated. But however much the young king loved his wife, and however happy he was, he still was always saying, "If only I could shudder, if only I could shudder." With time, this made her angry. Her chambermaid said, "I can help. I know how he can learn to shudder." She went out to the brook that flowed through the garden and caught a whole bucketful of minnows. That night, when the young king was asleep, his wife was to pull the covers off him and pour the bucketful of cold water and minnows onto him, so that the little fishes would wriggle all over him. When she did this, he woke up crying out, "Oh, what is making me shudder? What is making me shudder, dear wife? Yes, now I know how to shudder." 5. Faithful Johannes. Once upon a time, there was an old king who was ill. He thought, "I am lying on what must be my deathbed," then said, "Have faithful Johannes come to me." Faithful Johannes was his favorite servant, and was so called because he had been so loyal to him for his whole life long. When he approached the bed, the king said to him, "Most faithful Johannes, I feel that my end is near. My only concern is for my son. He is still young and may not always have the best judgment. I will not be able to close my eyes in peace if you do not promise to teach him everything that he ought to know, and to be his foster father." Faithful Johannes answered, "I will not forsake him, and will serve him faithfully, even if it costs me my life." At this, the old king said, "Then I will die in comfort and peace," adding, "After my death, show him the entire castle, all the chambers, halls and vaults, and all the treasures which lie therein. But do not show him the last chamber in the long gallery, which contains the portrait of the princess of the golden roof. If he sees that picture, he will fall violently in love with her, will fall down unconscious, and will put himself at great risk for her sake. You must protect him from that." After faithful Johannes had once more given his promise to the old king about this, the latter said no more, but laid his head on his pillow and died. After the old king had been carried to his grave, faithful Johannes told the young king all that he had promised his father on his deathbed, and said, "I will surely keep my promise, and will be loyal to you as I have been loyal to him, even if it should cost me my life." When the mourning was over, faithful Johannes said to the young king, "It is now time for you to see your inheritance. I will show you your father's castle." Then he took him everywhere, up and down, and let him see all the riches and the magnificent chambers. But there was one chamber which he did not open, the one that contained the dangerous portrait. Now the portrait was so placed that when the door was opened, one looked straight at it. It was so masterfully painted that it seemed to live and breathe and to be the most charming, beautiful thing in the whole world. The young king noticed that faithful Johannes always walked past this one door and said, "Why do you never open this one for me?" He replied, "There is something in there that would frighten you." The king answered, "I have seen the entire castle, and I want to know what is in this room as well." And he was about to break open the door by force. Faithful Johannes held him back, saying, "I promised your father before his death that you should not see inside this chamber. It could bring great misfortune on you and on me." "Oh no," replied the young king. "If I do not go in, it will be my certain downfall. I shall have no rest day or night until I have seen inside with my own eyes. I shall not leave here until you have unlocked the door." Faithful Johannes saw that there was no other way. With a heavy heart and many sighs, he took the key from the large ring. After opening the door, he went in first, thinking that he could block King's view of the portrait, that the king would not see it in front of him. But what good did it do? The king stood on tiptoes and saw the portrait over faithful Johannes's shoulder. After seeing the girl's portrait, which was so magnificent and glistened with gold and precious stones, he fell unconscious to the ground. Faithful Johannes picked him up, carried him to his bed, and sorrowfully thought, "Misfortune has befallen us, dear Lord. How will it end?" Then he strengthened the king with wine until he regained consciousness. The king's first words were, "Oh, whose portrait is that beautiful picture?" "That is the princess of the golden roof," answered faithful Johannes. The king continued, "My love for her is so great that if all the leaves on all the trees were tongues, they would not be able to express it. I will risk my life to win her. You are my most faithful Johannes. You must help me." The faithful servant thought to himself for a long time how to approach the matter, for it was difficult even to come into view of the king's daughter. Finally, he thought of a way and said to the king, "Everything which she has about her is of gold. Tables, chairs, dishes, cups, bowls, and household implements. Among your treasures are 5 tons of gold. Have the royal goldsmiths fashioned 1 ton into all manner of vessels and utensils, into all kinds of birds, wild beasts, and strange animals. She will like these things, and we will go there with them, and to try our luck." The king summoned all the goldsmiths, and they had to work night and day until at last the most splendid things were prepared. When everything had been loaded on board a ship, faithful Johannes disguised himself as a merchant, and the king had to do the same thing in order to make himself quite unrecognizable. Then they sailed across the sea and sailed on until they came to the city where the princess of the golden roof lived. Faithful Johannes had the king stay behind on the ship and wait for him. "Perhaps I shall bring the princess with me," he said. "Therefore see that everything is in order. Have the golden vessels set out and the whole ship decorated." Then he put all kinds of golden things into his apron, went on shore, and walked straight to the royal castle. When he entered the courtyard of the castle, a beautiful girl was standing there by the well with 2 golden buckets in her hand, drawing water with them. She was just turning around to carry away the sparkling water when she saw the stranger and asked who he was. He answered, "I am a merchant," opening his apron and letting her look in. "Oh, what beautiful golden things," she cried, putting her buckets down and looking at the golden wares one after the other. Then the girl said, "The princess must see these things. She takes such great pleasure in golden things that she will buy all you have." Taking him by the hand, she led him upstairs, for she was the princess's chambermaid. When the princess saw the wares, she was quite delighted and said, "They are so beautifully made that I will buy them all from you." But faithful Johannes said, "I am only the servant of a rich merchant." The things I have here are not to be compared with those my master has in his ship. They are the most beautiful and valuable things that have ever been made in gold." When she wanted to have everything brought up to her, he said, "There is so much that it would take a great many days to do that, and so many rooms would be required to exhibit them, that your house is not big enough." This made her all the more curious and desirous, so at last she said, "Take me to the ship. I will go there myself and see your master's treasures." Faithful Johannes happily led her to the ship, and when the king beheld her, he saw that she was even more beautiful than the portrait, and he thought that his heart would surely break. Then she boarded the ship, and the king led her inside. But faithful Johannes remained with the helmsman and ordered the ship to be pushed off, saying, "Set all the sails and fly like a bird in the air." Inside, the king showed her the golden vessels, every one of them, and also the wild beasts and strange animals. Many hours went by while she was looking at everything, and in her delight she did not notice that the ship was sailing away. After she had looked at the last item, she thanked the merchant and wanted to go home. But when she came to the side of the ship, she saw that it was on the high seas far from land, and speeding onward at full sail. "Oh," she cried in alarm, "I've been betrayed. I've been kidnapped and have fallen into the power of a merchant. I would rather die." Taking her by the hand, the king said, "I am not a merchant. I am a king, and of no lower birth than you are. If I have tricked you into coming with me, it is only because of my great love for you. The first time I saw your portrait, I fell to the ground unconscious." When the princess of the golden roof was comforted when she heard this, her heart yielded to him, and she willingly consented to marry him. Now it so happened that while they were sailing onward on the high sea, faithful Johannes, who was sitting at the front of the ship making music, saw 3 ravens flying through the air towards them. He stopped playing and listened to what they were saying to each other, for he could understand them. One cried, "Oh, he is carrying home the princess of the golden roof." "Yes," replied the second, "but he doesn't have her yet." The third one said, "Yes, he has her. She is sitting beside him in the ship." Then the first one began again, crying, "What good will that do him? When they reach land, a chestnut horse will leap forward to meet him, and the prince will want to mount it. But if he does that, it will leap up into the air with him, and he will never see his bride again." The second one spoke, "Is there no escape?" "Oh yes, if someone else quickly mounts it, takes the gun from its saddlebag, and shoots the horse dead, then young king will be rescued. But who knows that? And if anyone does know it, and tells it to the king, he will be turned to stone from his toes to his knees." Then the second raven said, "I know more than that. Even if the horse is killed, still the young king will not keep his bride. When they enter the castle together, a ready-made wedding shirt will be lying there on a platter. It will appear to be woven of gold and silver, but it is nothing but sulfur and pitch. If he puts it on, it will burn him to the very marrow and bone." The third one spoke, "Is there no escape at all?" "Oh yes," replied the second raven. "If anyone with gloves on seizes the garment and throws it into the fire and burns it up, the young king will be saved. But what good will that do? If anyone knows it and tells it to the king, half his body will become stone, from his knees to his heart. Then the third raven said, I know still more. Even if the wedding shirt is burned up, still the young king will not have his bride. After the wedding, when the dancing begins and the young queen is dancing, she will suddenly turn pale and fall down as if dead. If someone does not lift her up and draw 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spit them out again, she will die. But if anyone who knows that reveals it, his entire body will turn to stone, from the crown of his head to the soles of his feet. After the ravens had thus spoken, they flew away. Faithful Johannes had understood everything well. From that time forth he became quiet and sad, for if he concealed what he had heard from his master, it would bring misfortune to the king. But if he revealed it to him, then he himself would have to sacrifice his life. Finally, he said to himself, I will save my master, even if it brings destruction on myself. When they landed, what the raven foretold did indeed happen, and a magnificent chestnut horse sprang forward. Excellent, said the king. He shall carry me to my castle. He was about to mount it when faithful Johannes pushed in front of him, quickly jumped onto the horse, drew the gun from its saddlebag, and shot the horse. The king's other servants, who were not very fond of faithful Johannes, shouted, how shameful to kill the beautiful animal that was to have carried the king to his castle. But the king said, hold your peace and leave him alone. He is my most faithful Johannes. Who knows what good may come of this? They entered the castle, and in the hall there stood a platter on which lay the wedding shirt that appeared to be made of gold and silver. The young king went towards it and was about to take hold of it, but faithful Johannes pushed him away, seized it with gloves, carried it quickly to the fire, and burned it up. The other servants began to murmur again, saying, look, now he is even burning up the king's wedding shirt. But the young king said, who knows what good he may have done? Leave him alone. He is my most faithful Johannes. And now the wedding took place. The dance began, with the bride also taking part. Faithful Johannes was watchful and looked into her face. Suddenly she turned pale and fell to the ground as if she were dead. He ran quickly to her, picked her up, and carried her into a chamber. He laid her down, then knelt and sucked 3 drops of blood from her right breast and spat them out. Immediately she breathed again and regained consciousness. The young king saw what had happened, and not knowing why faithful Johannes had done it, grew angry and shouted, throw him into prison. The next morning, faithful Johannes was condemned and led to the gallows. Standing high on the platform and about to be executed, he said, everyone who is condemned to die is permitted before his end to say one last thing. May I too have this right? Yes, answered the king. You are granted this right. Faithful Johannes said, I have been unjustly condemned and have always been loyal to you. And he related how he had heard the conversation of the ravens at sea, and how he had had to do all these things in order to save his master. Then the king cried, O my most faithful Johannes, pardon, pardon, bring him down. But as faithful Johannes spoke the last word, he fell down lifeless and turned to stone. This caused the king and the queen great grief, and the king said, Oh, I have rewarded him very badly for his great loyalty. He then ordered the stone figure to be taken up and placed in his bedroom next to his bed. Every time that he looked at it, he wept, saying, Oh, if only I could bring you back to life again. my most faithful Johannes. Some time passed, and the queen bore twins, 2 sons who grew fast and were her delight. Once, when the queen was at church and the 2 children were sitting beside their father and playing, he again looked sadly at the stone statue and said, "Oh, if only I could bring you back to life again, my most faithful Johannes." Then the stone began to speak and said, "You can bring me back to life again if you will in return give up what is dearest to you." The king cried, "For you I will give up everything I have in the world." The stone continued, "If you will cut off the heads of your 2 children with your own hand, then sprinkle their blood on me, I shall be restored to life." The king was horrified when he heard that he would have to kill his own dearest children. But he thought of faithful Johannes's great loyalty and how he had died for him, then drew his sword, and with his own hand cut off the children's heads. And when he had smeared the stone with their blood, it returned to life, and faithful Johannes stood before him, again healthy and well. He said to the king, "Your loyalty shall not go unrewarded." Then taking the children's heads, he put them on again, then rubbed the wounds with their blood, at which they became immediately whole again, and jumped about and went on playing as if nothing had happened. The king was overjoyed. When he saw the queen coming, he hid faithful Johannes and the 2 children in a large chest. When she entered, he said to her, "Have you been praying in the church?" "Yes," she answered, "but I have constantly been thinking about faithful Johannes and what misfortune has befallen him because of us." Then he said, "Dear wife, we can give him his life again, but it will cost us our 2 little sons. We will have to sacrifice them." The queen turned pale and her heart filled with terror, but she said, "We owe it to him for his great loyalty." The king rejoiced to hear that she agreed with him. Then he opened up the chest and brought forth faithful Johannes and the children, saying, "God be praised. Faithful Johannes has been saved, and we have our little sons again as well." He told her how everything had happened. Then they lived happily together until they died. 6. The Good Bargain. A peasant had driven his cow to the fair and sold her for 7 thalers. On the way home, he had to walk past a pond, and already from afar, he heard the frogs crying, "Ark, ark, ark, ark," which in his language sounded like 8, 8, 8, 8. "Well," said he to himself, "they are talking nonsense. It is 7 that I was paid, not 8. When he reached the water, he shouted to them, "You are stupid creatures. Don't you know any better than that? It is 7 thalers, not 8. The frogs, however, kept up with their "Uck, uck, uck, uck." "Now then, if you won't believe it, I can count it out for you." Then taking his money out of his pocket, he counted out the 7 thalers, 24 groschens in each one. However, the frogs paid no attention to his counting, and again cried out, "Ark, ark, ark, ark." "Aha!" shouted the peasant, quite angry. "If you think that you know better than I do, then count it yourselves." And he threw all the money at them into the water. He stood still, wanting to stay there until they were finished and had returned his money to him. But the frogs did not budge from their opinion and continued to cry out, "Ark, ark, ark, ark." And furthermore, they did not throw the money back to him. He waited a long time until evening finally came, and he had to go home. Then he cursed the frogs, shouting at them, "You water splashers, you thick heads, you goggle eyes, you have big mouths and can shout until a person's ears hurt, but you cannot count 7 tailors. Do you think that I want to stand here until you are finished?" Then he walked away, with the frog still crying out after him, "Ag, ag, ag, ag." He arrived at home in a sour mood. Some time later, he bought himself another cow, which he slaughtered. He calculated that if he sold the meat for a good price, he could earn as much as the 2 cows had been worth together, and have the hide as well. He went to town with the meat. An entire pack of dogs had gathered together just outside the town gate, with a large greyhound at the head of the pack. The greyhound jumped at the meat, sniffing and barking, "Bow, wow, bow, wow." When the dog would not stop, the peasant said to him, "Yes, I understand that you are saying, 'Bow, wow,' because you want some of the meat, but I would be in a fine state if I gave it to you." The dog's only answer was, "Bow, wow. Will you not eat it all up, and will you be responsible for your companions?" "Bow, wow," said the dog. "Well, if you insist on it, I will leave it with you. I know you well, and I know who your master is, but I am telling you, I must have my money in 3 days, or you will be sorry. You can just bring it out to me." With this he unloaded the meat and turned back toward home. The dogs jumped on the meat, barking loudly, "Bow, wow." The peasant heard them from afar and said to himself, "Listen, they all want some, but the big dog will be responsible for it." When 3 days had passed, the peasant thought, "Tonight you'll have the money in your pocket," and was quite satisfied. But no one came to pay him. "No one is to be trusted nowadays," he said. Finally, he lost his patience and went to town and to the butcher, from whom he demanded his money. The butcher thought it was a joke, but the peasant said, "All joking aside, I want my money. Did not the big dog bring home to you an entire slaughtered cow 3 days ago?" Then the butcher grew angry, picked up a broomstick and chased him out. "Wait," said the peasant, "there is still some justice in the world." And he went to the royal palace and asked for a hearing. He was led before the king, who was sitting there with his daughter. The king asked him what injury he had suffered. "Alas," he said, "the frogs and the dogs stole my belongings from me, and the butcher paid me for my losses with a stick." Then he told them everything that had happened. At this, the king's daughter began to laugh out loud, and the king said to him, "I cannot make that right for you, but instead you shall have my daughter for your wife." She had never laughed before in her whole life, until just now at you, and I have promised her to the man who could make her laugh. You can thank God for your good fortune." "Oh," answered the peasant, "I do not want her. I have one wife at home already, and she is too much for me. Whenever I go home, it is just as if I had a wife standing in every corner." Then the king grew angry and said, "You are a lout." "Alas, your majesty," answered the peasant, "what can you expect from an ox but beef?" "Wait," replied the king. "You shall have another reward. Get out of here for now, but come back in 3 days, and then 500 shall be counted out for you in full." When the peasant passed through the gate, the sentry said, "You made the king's daughter laugh, so you must have received something very good." "Yes, that is right," answered the peasant. 500 are to be counted out to me." "Listen," said the soldier, "give me some of it. How can you spend all that money?" "Because it is you," said the peasant. You shall have 200. In 3 days report to the king, and have it counted out for you." A Jew, who had been standing nearby and had overheard the conversation, ran after the peasant, took hold of his coat and said, "Miracle of God, what a child of fortune you are. I will change it for you. I will change it for you into smaller coins. What do you want with hard tailors?" "Jew," said the peasant, "you can have 300. Give it to me right now in coins. 3 days from now you will be paid for it by the king." The Jew was delighted with his small profit, and brought the sum in bad groschens, 3 of which were worth 2 good ones. After 3 days had passed, in keeping with the king's order, the peasant went before the king. "Pull off his coat," said the king. "He shall have his 500. "Alas," said the peasant, "they no longer belong to me. I gave 200 of them to the sentry, and the Jew has changed 300 for me. So rightfully nothing more belongs to me." In the meantime, the soldier and the Jew entered and demanded what they had received from the peasant, and they received the blows carefully counted out. The soldier bore it patiently, for he already knew how it tasted, but the Jew cried out pitifully, oh my, are these the hard tailors?" The king had to laugh at the peasant, and when his anger had subsided, he said, "Because you lost your reward even before you received it, I will replace it for you. Go into my treasure chamber and take as much money for yourself as you want." The peasant did not need to be told twice, and he stuffed as much as would fit into his big pockets. After that, he went to an inn and counted out his money. The Jew had crept after him and heard him muttering to himself, "That rascal of a king has cheated me after all. If he himself had given me the money, then I would know how much I have. Now how can I know if what I had the luck to put into my pockets is right? God forbid," said the Jew to himself. "He is speaking disrespectfully of His Majesty. I will run and report him, and then I shall get a reward, and furthermore, he will be punished." When the king heard what the peasant had said, he fell into a rage, and ordered the Jew to go and bring the offender to him. The Jew ran to the peasant and said, "You are to go to His Majesty the King at once, and just as you are." "I know better than that what is right," answered the peasant. "First, let me have a new coat made for myself." "Do you think that a man with so much money in his pocket should go before the king in this tattered old coat?" The Jew, seeing that the peasant could not be moved without another coat, and fearing that if the king's anger cooled, he himself would lose his reward, and the peasant his punishment, said, "Out of pure friendship I will lend you a handsome coat for a little while. What people will not do for love." The peasant was satisfied with this, put on the Jew's coat, and went off with him. The king confronted the peasant with the evil things the Jew had accused him of saying. "Oh," said the peasant, "what a Jew says is always a lie. No true word ever comes out of his mouth. That rascal there is even capable of claiming that I have his coat on." "What are you saying?" shouted the Jew. "Is that coat not mine? Did I not lend it to you out of pure friendship, so that you could appear before His Majesty the King?" When the king heard this, he said, "For sure the Jew has deceived one of us, either myself or the peasant." And once again he had the Jew paid out in hard tailors. The peasant, however, went home wearing the good coat and with the good money in his pockets, saying to himself, "This time I made it." 7. The Strange Musician. Once upon a time, there was a strange musician who was walking through the woods all by himself, thinking about this and that. When there was nothing left for him to think about, he said to himself, "It is boring here in the woods. I am going to get myself a good companion." Then he took his fiddle from his back and played a tune that sounded through the trees. Before long, a wolf came trotting through the thicket toward him. "Ah, a wolf is coming. I have no desire for him," said the musician. But the wolf came nearer and said to him, "Ah, dear musician, you play very well. I too would like to learn to play." "You can learn quickly," answered the musician. "You will only have to do what I tell you." "Oh, musician," said the wolf, "I will obey you like a pupil obeys his teacher." The musician told him to come along with him, and when they had walked some distance together, they came to an old oak tree. It was hollow inside and split up the middle. "Look," said the musician, "if you want to learn to play the fiddle, put your forepaws into this crack." The wolf obeyed, and the musician quickly picked up a stone, and with one blow wedged his two paws so firmly that he had to stay lying there like a prisoner. "Wait here until I return," said the musician, and went on his way. After a while, he again said to himself, "It is boring here in the woods. I will get myself another companion." He took his fiddle and again played into the woods. Before long, a fox came creeping through the trees toward him. "Ah, a fox is coming," said the musician. "I have no desire for him." The fox came up to him and said, "Oh, dear musician, you play very well. I too would like to learn to play." "You can learn quickly," said the musician. "You will only have to do what I tell you." "Oh, musician," answered the fox, "I will obey you like a pupil obeys his teacher." "Follow me," said the musician, and when they had gone some distance together, they came to a footpath with tall saplings on both sides. There the musician stood still, and from one side he bent a young hazelnut tree down to the ground and put his foot on the end of it. Then he bent down another young tree from the other side and said, "Now, little fox, if you want to learn something, give me your left front paw." The fox obeyed, and the musician tied his paw to the left stem. "Little fox," he said, "now give me your right paw." He tied this one to the right stem. After making sure that the knots in the cord were tight enough, he let go. The tree sprang upright and jerked the little fox upward, leaving him hanging there struggling in the air. "Wait here until I return," said the musician, and went on his way. Once again he said to himself, "It is boring here in the woods. I will get myself another companion." So he took his fiddle, and music sounded through the woods. Then a little hare came jumping toward him. "Ah, a hare is coming," said the musician. "I do not want him." "Oh, dear musician," said the hare, "you play very well. I too would like to learn to play." "You can learn quickly," said the musician. "You will only have to do what I tell you." "Oh, musician," replied the little hare, "I will obey you like a pupil obeys his teacher." When they had gone some distance together, they came to an aspen tree in a clearing in the woods. The musician tied a long string around the little hare's neck, then tied the other end of the string to the tree. "Now quickly, little hare, run 20 times around the tree," shouted the musician, and the little hare obeyed. When he had run around 20 times, he had wound the string 20 times around the trunk of the tree, and the little hare was caught. the more the hare tugged and pulled, the more the string cut into his tender neck. "Wait here until I return," said the musician, and went on his way. The wolf, in the meantime, had pushed and pulled and bitten at the stone, and had worked so long that he freed his feet from the crack. Full of anger and rage, he rushed after the musician, wanting to tear him to pieces. When the fox saw him running by, he began to wail, crying out with all his might, "Brother Wolf, come help me. The musician has tricked me." The wolf pulled down the trees, bit the cord in two, and freed the fox, who went with him to take revenge on the musician. They found the tied-up hare, whom they rescued as well. Then, all together, they set forth to find their enemy. The musician had played his fiddle once again as he went on his way, and this time he had been more fortunate. The sound reached the ears of a poor woodcutter, who instantly, whether he wanted to or not, stopped working and, with his axe under his arm, came toward the musician to listen to the music. "At last the right companion is coming," said the musician, "for I was seeking a human being, not wild animals." And he began to play so beautifully and delightfully that the poor man stood there enraptured, his heart filled with pleasure. While he was thus standing there, the wolf, the fox, and the hare approached. He saw well that they had evil intentions, so he raised his shining axe and placed himself before the musician, as if to say, "Anyone who wants to harm him, beware, for he will have to deal with me." Then the beast took fright and ran back into the woods. The musician, however, played one more tune for the man to thank him, and then went on his way. 8. The 12 Brothers. Once upon a time, there were a king and a queen. They lived happily together and had 12 children, all boys. One day, the king said to his wife, "If our 13th child, which you are soon going to bring into the world, is a girl, then the 12 others shall die, so that her wealth may be great, and so that she alone may inherit the kingdom." Indeed, he had 12 coffins made. They were filled with wood shavings, and each was fitted with a coffin pillow. He had them put in a locked room, and gave the key to the queen, ordering her to tell no one about them. The mother sat and mourned the entire day, until the youngest son, who was always with her and who was named Benjamin after the Bible, said to her, "Dear mother, why are you so sad?" "Dearest child," she answered, "I cannot tell you." However, he would not leave her in peace until she unlocked the room and showed him the coffins, already filled with wood shavings. Then she said, "My dearest Benjamin, your father had these coffins made for you and your 11 brothers. If I bring a girl into the world, you are all to be killed and buried in them." As she spoke and cried, her son comforted her, saying, "Don't cry, dear mother. We will take care of ourselves and run away." Then she said, "Go out into the woods with your 11 brothers. One of you should climb the highest tree that you can find. Keep watch there and look toward the castle tower. If I give birth to a little son, I will raise a white flag. If I give birth to a little daughter, I will raise a red flag, and then you should escape as fast as you can, and may God protect you. I will get up every night and pray for you in the winter, that you may warm yourselves near a fire, and in the summer, that you may not suffer from the heat." After she had blessed her children, they went out into the woods. One after the other of them kept watch, sitting atop the highest oak tree and looking toward the tower. After 11 days had passed, and it was Benjamin's turn, he saw that a flag had been raised. It was not the white one, but instead the red blood flag, decreeing that they all were to die. When the boys heard this, they became angry and cried out, "Are we to suffer death for the sake of a girl? We swear that we will take revenge. Wherever we find a girl, her red blood shall flow." Then they went deeper into the woods, and in its middle, where it was darkest, they found a little bewitched house that was empty. They said, "We will live here. You, Benjamin, you are the youngest and weakest. You shall stay at home and keep house. We others will go and get things to eat." Thus they went into the woods and shot rabbits, wild deer, birds, and doves, and whatever they could eat. These they brought to Benjamin, and he had to prepare them to satisfy their hunger. They lived together in this little house for 10 years, but the time passed quickly for them. The little daughter that their mother, the queen, had given birth to was now grown up. She had a good heart, a beautiful face, and a golden star on her forehead. Once on a large wash day, she saw 12 men's shirts in the laundry and asked her mother, "Whose are these 12 shirts? They are much too small for father." The queen answered with a heavy heart, "Dear child, they belong to your 12 brothers." The girl said, "Where are my 12 brothers? I have never even heard of them." She answered, "Only God knows where they are. They are wandering about in the world." Then she took the girl, unlocked the room for her, and showed her the 12 coffins with the wood shavings and the coffin pillows. "These coffins," she said, "were intended for your brothers, but they secretly ran away before you were born." And she told her how everything had happened. Then the girl said, "Dear mother, don't cry. I will go and look for my brothers." Then she took the 12 shirts and went forth into the great woods. She walked the entire day, in the evening coming to the bewitched little house. She went inside and found a young lad, who asked, "Where do you come from, and where are you going?" He was astounded that she was so beautiful, that she was wearing royal clothing, and that she had a star on her forehead. "I am a princess and am looking for my 12 brothers. I will walk on as long as the sky is blue, until I find them." She also showed him the 12 shirts that belonged to them. Benjamin saw that it was his sister and said, "I am Benjamin, your youngest brother." She began to cry for joy, and Benjamin did so as well. They kissed and embraced one another with great love. Then he said, "Dear sister, I must warn you that we have agreed that every girl whom we meet must die." She said, "I will gladly die, if I can thus redeem my 12 brothers." "No," he answered, "you shall not die. Sit under this tub until our 11 brothers come, and I will make it right with them." She did this, and when night fell, they came home from the hunt. As they sat at the table eating, they asked, "What is new?" Benjamin said, "Don't you know anything?" "No," they answered. He continued speaking, "You have been in the woods while I stayed at home, but I know more than you do." "Then tell us," they shouted. He answered, "If you will promise me that the next girl we meet shall not be killed." "Yes," they all shouted, "we will show her mercy. Just tell us." Then he said, "Our sister is here," and lifted up the tub. The princess came forth in her royal clothing, and with the golden star on her forehead, so beautiful, delicate, and fine. They all rejoiced, falling around her neck and kissing her, and they loved her with all their hearts. Now she stayed at home with Benjamin and helped him with the work. The 11 went into the woods and captured wild game, deer, birds, and doves, so they would have something to eat. Their sister and Benjamin prepared it all. They gathered wood for cooking, herbs for the stew, and put the pot onto the fire, so a meal was always ready when the 11 came home. She also kept the house in order and made up the beds white and clean. The brothers were always satisfied, and they lived happily with her. One time the two of them had prepared a good meal at home. And so they sat together and ate and drank and were ever so happy. Now there was a little garden next to the bewitched house, and in it there were 12 lilies, the kind that are called students. Wanting to bring some pleasure to her brothers, she picked the 12 flowers, intending to give one to each of them when they were eating. But in the same instant that she picked the flowers, the 12 brothers were transformed into 12 ravens, and they flew away above the woods. The house and the garden disappeared as well. Now the poor girl was alone in the wild woods. Looking around, she saw an old woman standing next to her. The old woman said, "My child, what have you done? Why did you not leave the 12 white flowers standing? Those were your brothers, and now they have been transformed into ravens forever." The girl said, crying, "Is there no way to redeem them?" "No," said the old woman. "There is only one way in the world, and it is so difficult that you will never redeem them. You must remain silent for 7 whole years, neither speaking nor laughing. If you speak a single word, even if all but 1 hour of the 7 years has passed, then it will all be for nothing, and your brothers will be killed by that one word." Then the girl said in her heart, "I know for sure that I will redeem my brothers." She went and found a tall tree and climbed to its top, where she sat and span, without speaking and without laughing. Now it came to pass that a king was hunting in these woods. He had a large grey hound that ran to the tree where the girl was sitting. It jumped about, yelping and barking up the tree. The king came, saw the beautiful princess with the golden star on her forehead, and was so enchanted by her beauty that he shouted up to her, asking her to become his wife. She gave him no answer, but nodded with her head. Then he himself climbed the tree, carried her down, set her on his horse, and took her home with him. Their wedding was celebrated with great pomp and joy, but the bride neither spoke nor laughed. After they had lived a few years happily together, the king's mother, who was a wicked woman, began to slander the young queen, saying to the king, "You have brought home a common beggar woman for yourself. Who knows what kind of godless thing she is secretly doing? Even if she is a mute and cannot speak, she could at least laugh. Anyone who does not laugh has an evil conscience." At first the king did not want to believe this, but the old woman kept it up so long, accusing her of so many wicked things, that the king finally let himself be convinced, and he sentenced her to death. A great fire was lit in the courtyard, where she was to be burned to death. The king stood upstairs at his window, looking on with crying eyes, for he still loved her dearly. She had already been bound to the stake, and the fire was licking at her clothing with its red tongues, when the last moment of the 7 years passed. A whirring sound was heard in the air, and 12 ravens approached, landing together. As they touched the earth, it was her 12 brothers, whom she had redeemed. They ripped the fire apart put out the flames and freed their sister, kissing and embracing her. Now that she could open her mouth and speak, she told the king why she had remained silent and had never laughed. The king rejoiced to hear that she was innocent, and they all lived happily together until they died. The wicked stepmother was brought before the court and placed in a barrel filled with boiling oil and poisonous snakes, and she died an evil death. 9. The Pack of Scoundrels. The rooster said to the hen, "Now is the time when the nuts are getting ripe. Let us go up the mountain together, and for once eat our fill, before the squirrel takes them all away." "Yes," answered the hen. "Come, let us go and have some fun together." Together they went up the mountain, and since it was a clear day, they stayed until evening. Now I don't know whether it was because they had overeaten or they were just in high spirits. But, to make a long story short, they did not want to go back home on foot, so the rooster had to make a little carriage out of nutshells. When it was finished, the hen sat down in it and said to the rooster, "You can hitch yourself to it." "You are dreaming," said the rooster. "I would rather go home on foot than have myself hitched up. That was not our agreement. I want to be the coachman and sit in the driver's seat. I am not going to pull it." While they were quarreling about this, a duck came quacking by. "You thieves, who invited you to my nut mountain? Wait, you'll be sorry." And with an open beak she attacked the rooster. The rooster did not take this lying down. Jumping furiously onto the duck, he hacked at her so fiercely with one of his spurs that she begged for mercy, and as punishment she had to accept being hitched to the carriage. So the rooster sat in the driver's seat and was the coachman, and away they sped. Run, duck, run as fast as you can. After they had travelled a little way, they met two people on foot, a pin and a needle. "Stop, stop," shouted the pin and the needle, saying that soon it would be pitch dark, and they would not be able to walk another step. Moreover, the road was very dirty. They asked if they would not be able to climb inside for a little way, explaining that they had been at the tailor's tavern just outside the town gate, and that they had sat there too long over their beer. Seeing that they were thin people and would not take up much room, the rooster let them both climb in, although they did have to promise that they would not step on his or on the hen's feet. Late that evening they came to an inn, where they turned in, not wanting to drive any further into the night. Furthermore, the duck's feet were not doing well, and she was waddling from one side to the other. At first, the innkeeper did not want to receive them. He said that his inn was already full, but he was also thinking that these were not very respectable people. They begged him with their kindest words, offering to give him the egg that the hen had laid on the way, and telling him that he could keep the duck, who laid an egg every day. Finally, he said that they could spend the night there. They ordered food and drink and had a high time. Early the next morning, just as it was getting light and everyone was still asleep, the rooster woke up the hen. They got the egg, pecked it open, and ate it together, throwing the shells into the fireplace. Then they went to the needle, who was still asleep, grabbed it by the head, and stuck it into the innkeeper's seat cushion. They stuck the pin into his towel, and then without further ado, they fled across the heath. The duck, who preferred to sleep under the open sky, had spent the night in the courtyard, and she heard them sneaking away. She forced herself to wake up, found a brook, and swam away downstream, much faster than she had travelled in front of the carriage. A few hours later, the innkeeper climbed out of the feathers, washed himself, and started to dry off on the towel when the pin went across his face, leaving a red streak from one ear to the other. Then he went into the kitchen. He wanted to light his pipe, but as he approached the fireplace, the eggshell sprang into his eyes. "Everything is after my head today," he said, sitting down crossly in the grandfather chair, but he jumped up immediately, shouting, "Ouch!" The needle had stuck him even worse, and not in the head. Now he was totally angry. Suspecting the guests who had arrived so late yesterday evening, he went to look for them, but they were gone. He then vowed never again to take in such a pack of scoundrels who eat and drink a lot, pay nothing, and for thanks play mean tricks.